Hi, my name's Penny Snowball, and this is the 10th in a series of 12 short documentaries entitled In Search of My Mental Health, The Road to Recovery. And this particular section, we're going to be discussing dual diagnosis and what that actually is in terms of, yes, I'm a lot of people, and I believe personally, underneath most addictions, in fact all addictions, is a childhood trauma, not always abuse, childhood trauma, or some sort of reason why people are using drugs, as we've discussed before. But not everybody has what is also known as dual diagnosis. That's another, seems to be another section in the treatment of addictions, and I just wonder, because that's a specialist area, isn't it, that you've studied more, Sandra?
Yeah, I mean, the NHS definition of someone suffering from dual diagnosis is someone who's got a severe and enduring mental illness, such as schizophrenia, bipolar, something like that, which runs concurrently with a substance misuse issue. And generally, it's people are self-medicating. They're using drugs to sort of calm the voices down, lift their mood, chill out maybe if they're sort of in a manic phase of bipolar, or just generally manage their symptoms. But I mean, in addition to that, I'd say probably 100% of people who use substances problematically have some level of anxiety or depression. No, which again is sort of, it can be classified as mental illness because it's very distressing.
Yeah.
And I think the trouble with dual diagnosis is that if you've got some sort of long-term form of mental distress, you are going to be continually tempted to self-medicate to alleviate the symptoms.
This is quite common with schizophrenia, where people medicate or go off their medications, and then because they're feeling better, they start to feel worse. When they start to go down again, they start to use drugs or alcohol to self-medicate to bring themselves back to a level again. I think dual diagnosis or mental health, everybody at some point or other has a mental health problem. Most of us suffer through depression at some point in our lives. With people who are addicted to drugs, very often they're using suppressant drugs, so it's emphasised. So if they do get depressed whilst they're using, then their depression becomes worse. And one of the problems is, if they get more depressed, then they're likely to use more. So it's a sort of
self-perpetuating cycle.
So I think dual diagnosis is probably relevant to most people who have some form of substance misuse, don't you?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I think it's I think it's not reported as highly. I think the official sort of stats are about 40%.
Right.
But then that's sort of quite a high threshold if you're talking about severe and enduring mental illness and not taking into account sort of chronic anxiety and chronic depression.
Yeah, I think this takes me back also to actually getting the right help. I think this is like the enduring mental health problems, stress, anxiety, all of those things. If you get the right help, then it's almost like it would take that pressure off, because part of that pressure is about, for me anyway, it was about attaching to somebody, getting close to somebody. I mean, I was in psychoanalysis for 12 years, which apparently is far too long for some people. And the problem that I had with that was that I was even discussed the other day actually with somebody, was the fact that for me, I would arrive at her door, and I believed, even though her car was in the drive, even though it was in my diary that she was going to be there at 9 o'clock, if she didn't answer that door immediately, I thought she wasn't there. And apparently that shows the level of abandonment for me. But nothing made sense. Nothing was real. All the evidence showed that she was there, but for me, she wasn't there. It was always this anxiety. And that relationship went on for 6 years on the NHS, as I say. Then she went private. The NHS stopped their funding and she went private, and I didn't have the money to pay her. So then I could only see her once a month, which is, I think, when I started coming to Surrey Alcohol and Drug Advisory Services. And I was going through severe, like a court case at that point and everything. And I just really was feeling quite crazy. And for me, it was like this whole, what is real, what isn't real. But I didn't know how to say anything. And I discussed it with someone the other day, and they were saying, so the whole of that time, because apparently there's a thing called transference that goes on between a therapist and a patient. And because apparently she was like my mother, but I didn't understand what was going on in that transference. For whatever reason, either it hadn't been explained to me or whatever. And during that time, I relapsed. I relapsed. I put on 3 stone in weight. It took me about 40 minutes to actually get into what it was even going on, and then 10 minutes I would be able to talk, and then I'd be out again. And I used to challenge. I used to say, who the bloody hell's Freud anyway? Who said 50 minutes is enough? 50 minutes might be enough for some people. But, we all know Freud was a cocaine. Well, no, we don't all. But he was, I wonder whether he needed a quick snort of cocaine in between patients. I was becoming all really random about it. And I got very angry about it, because for someone like me, 50 minutes is not okay. But
well, it sounds as if it's sort of replicating your early childhood experience.
Yes.
And in the transference,
Yes.
you're feeling that.
Yes.
And not able to speak
Yes.
up and be heard.
Yes.
But then I'm wondering what was going on for her, because it almost sounds as if her countertransference was that she was sort of replicating your mother's behaviour and not being available and abandoning you, and that was never spoken of.
I used to get angry with her. But I never really understood completely what was going on. I never really got it. And in the end, I think she did. I think she gave me everything she could. But I don't think that it was. I don't think I understood it. I went out there stuffing my face. I started eating chocolate. I started, I really, I'd leave her room. But the other thing was, because it took me so long to get into this, having the connection, calming down, as it were, particularly when I was only going once a month, that was just crazy. That was crazy. And this is what is, this whole underlying, this whole the dual diagnosis. When all that starts coming up, it's about how do you handle it? Who is it? What is it? Because it's just a minefield. For me, I felt completely out of control once I'd put the drugs down and the alcohol, and then the food kicked off, as I said. But it's that I didn't know that I was mentally unwell. I think that's the point I'm really trying to make. I didn't know what the hell was going on. I was just totally lost within this dynamic, and I couldn't verbalise it. And someone said to me the other day, "So you started being a good girl?" See? So I stuff it, because I thought if I shouted at her or told her how angry I was, she'd kick me out and reject me and abandon me. So there was all that going on.
So the reality was never coming out.
Pardon?
You were protecting yourself and your engagement with her by not telling her the truth.
Yeah, and I don't know why I was doing that.
But you were frightened.
Yeah. And this is what I mean by the dual this is, for me, is the dual diagnosis. What is that?
I think one of the diagnoses that very often gets overlooked is a thing called paranoia, and a paranoid fear that people have. And this is very often associated with people with drug and alcohol use, especially cannabis, and with cocaine, and with heroin, and with alcohol. People get paranoid. And if you're inclined towards paranoia, that is going out of reality and exaggerating things, then it doesn't stop when you stop using the drug, because it continues for quite a long time afterwards.
You're fighting two things at the same time,
So
aren't
you're
you?
fighting that and
And a substance.
And I believed it. And it was so
well,
real.
paranoia is a reality to the person who has it.
Yeah.
It's not unreal. It is so real to them. It's about their existence. They do things which you might think, well, that's a mad thing to do, but because it feels so real for them.